Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. I'd invite everyone to rise and join Council in the singing of O Canada. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. I will now give our opening prayer, followed by our moment of silent reflection, at which time we will begin our meeting. God, grant us understanding and patience that justice, truth, and honesty may be evident in our decisions. Make us mindful of the needs of the people throughout the town of Oakville. Help us govern with the wider community in mind, and so create in us a desire for progress and responsible action. We ask this in your name. Amen. Thank you, everyone. Madam Clerk, are there regrets? I don't actually see any absences. We have no regrets tonight. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Thank you, Council. You have before you your minutes from the previous sessions of Council, May 30th, the confidential minutes from May 30th, and the regular session on June 13th. Councillor Johnston? Seconded by Councillor Duddick. Separations, discussion, changes. All in favor? Opposed, if any? They're adopted. We have no public presentations this evening, but we have a couple of hours worth of delegations if everyone avails themselves of their allotted 10-minute portion. Madam Clerk, would you call the first delegation?
The first delegation is Elka Ruth Anola of the Oakville Literary Alliance regarding the room booking procedures, item 8 of the Administrative Services Committee agenda.
Ms. Anola, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you. Is this okay where it is?
Give it a try and we'll see.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Burton, members of council, my name is Elka Ruth Anola, and I'm the coordinator of the Oakville Literary Alliance, which consists of the Oakville Poetry Alliance and the Oakville Prose Alliance. On behalf of the Oakville Literary Alliance, I wish to congratulate the Administrative Services Committee for recommending a no-fee policy for nonprofits using our town hall. Room booking procedure includes some procedural items and some financial items, and includes an appendix relating to facilities other than town hall. As a representative of the arts community, I would like to address how the town allocates charges for spaces used by this community. We are well aware that fees that will be applied to the use of one facility will affect the town's policies re other facilities. While my comments apply to all facilities, we are particularly concerned with QEP. When I first learned about the proposed QEP development, like many in the arts, I was elated. I thought the town was saying, we understand the great importance of the arts to a healthy community, and in order to be the most livable town in Canada, we will support the arts in every way we can. Unfortunately, the town does not seem willing to invest in the emotional, psychological, and creative growth of residents. I say does not seem to because I sincerely believe that council truly does support the arts and does understand the immense benefits to the people of Oakville. But actions and proposals related, especially to QEP, undermine that conviction. The current town suggestions for QEP pricing is directly related to charges made in other town facilities and in the open marketplace. That does not sound to us like a commitment to the arts. The town of Oakville spends a great deal of money on trees. Nowhere have I seen a concern that the expenditure on trees and their care does not make money. We use a non-financial set of criteria to determine the value of the money spent on trees. The same should apply to the arts. Financial support of the arts is an investment, not an expenditure, for a healthy, vibrant, integrated, and interrelated Oakville. I see two main art groups, those who depend upon income from their craft and those who don't. Professionals should indeed pay for use of space. They do so now. The town should be doing all it can to entice them to QEP. The rest of the arts community is also divided into two groups. Those who have special needs, such as floorings, acoustics, ventilation, lighting, etc., and those who don't. Those with special requirements should pay for those rooms. But those that need nothing special, just a couple of tables and chairs, and who currently do not pay for space, should not be shut out. The Oakville Literary Alliance is quite different from other groups and individuals who will be using QEP. Whereas musicians or actors would be performing in private, the member groups of the OLA would have an open door policy, and anyone in QEP would be welcome and encouraged to drop in and participate in any poetry group in session. We want poetry to reach everyone, and we want everyone to have access to a poetic environment. A one-size-fits-all policy is neat on paper, but it's not fair. We are not interested in sameness, but in fairness. Oakville will never be the most livable town in Canada unless money spent fostering the arts is seen as an investment and not as a cost to be financially recouped. It's all about the quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your information. Questions? Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Is Mervyn Russell, Oakville Community Center for Peace, Ecology, and Human Rights regarding room booking procedures. Again, item 8 of Administrative Services.
Welcome, Mr. Russell. Council looks forward to your information.
Your Worship, first of all, with your indulgence, may I point out that my name is misspelt. It should have 2 L's rather than 1.
I beg your pardon for the offense. We'll have the record in the minutes corrected.
Thank you. Your Worship, Mayor Burton, councillors, first of all, may I thank Council for hearing me this evening. I'm hoping and indeed expecting Council will accept the recommendation of the Administrative Services Committee moved by yourself, Mayor, and adopted unanimously by the committee, that no fees be charged for the midweek use of Town Hall by charitable and not-for-profit groups based in Oakville. I want to make a few points briefly. First, when I canvassed a variety of not-for-profit groups about the town's decision to impose fees for the use of town hall rooms midweek, all of them, without exception, were upset by this decision and saw it as a withdrawal of support for the voluntary sector. Second, when the schedule of fees and protocols for the use of rooms midweek was published in the committee's agenda, the fees were seen to be exorbitantly high. It would cost an organisation approximately $370 to hold a midweek evening meeting for the required 3-hour booking. A room for the same size could be rented from the Oakville Hilton Hotel at $340 and for the Oakville Holiday Inn at $300. Even a small room during the day would cost $70, even though the town hall would be open and in full use. I hope after last Tuesday's meeting, the issue of fees is going to be settled. Nevertheless, there still remains other issues which could make it impossible for many not-for-profits to use the rooms, such as the requirement to carry $5 million of indemnity insurance and other restrictive booking practices that need, I think, to be negotiated with not-for-profit groups. Third, if you were to go ahead with the imposition of fees that exclude not-for-profit organisations using the town hall rooms, council would lose a great deal of public goodwill. We in the not-for-profit sector feel we contribute to the material, intellectual and spiritual well-being of our community. And we consider that the free use of rooms at the centre of our community recognises that, and we appreciate that recognition. The view that I've consistently heard from representatives of the not-for-profit sector is that we believe that the midweek use of rooms at the town hall contributes considerably to Oakville having a vital, varied, volunteering community of active citizens. That surely is what a village, a town, or city should be like. Of course, we should see what other committees are doing and adopt best practices wherever we find them. But our motto is to be the most livable community in Canada, which surely means we want to be the best. If we want to be the best, then we must be willing to take the lead, to set the standard, and not just to conform to what others are doing. If the free use of town hall rooms midweek contributes significantly, as I believe it does, to an active, creative, contributing citizenry, then this is what we should be proud to display and boast of to Burlington, Brampton, Mississauga, oh, bless my soul, even to Toronto. We should be saying, in effect, to these other municipalities, this is how you promote a thriving community. Why don't you follow our example? I want to end this presentation by calling on Council to make some changes in direction as regards the voluntary sector. I hope the turnaround of Council on the issue of charging disappointing, discouraging and damaging fees from the not-for-profit sector, I hope this turnaround will be the beginning of a recognition by Council that, if I may put it this way, it needs to change its ways as they're perceived by many of us in the not-for-profit sector. This is a perception that's based upon such instances as the prolonged and acrimonious planning dispute with faith communities, the discontinuance of citizen advisory committees without, I understand, any advance warning to the citizen participants, the recommendation for the imposition of exorbitant fees on not-for-profit organizations, and in the case of the organization that I was recently chair of, the Oakville Community Centre for Peace, Ecology and Human Rights, the runaround that we had this year in booking the Glen Abbey Rec Centre for our annual EcoFest, which left us only 3 months rather than 9 to organise a major exhibition. I urge Council to change its ways from control to cooperation, power to partnership, closure to openness. Please take the necessary steps to develop a working culture at the town hall where the voluntary sector is not treated as an irritant or a nuisance, but as active, contributing citizens who deserve respect, help, and support. Put our concerns on your agendas, and please do not make us promises that you really have no commitment to fulfill. The voluntary sector has great gifts of eagerness, energy, and expertise to share with Council if you will invite us to your table. This is the way to make a thriving and satisfying community. This is the way to make Oakville the most livable community in Canada. I urge you to vote for option 4. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Russell, for your information. Councillor Elgar has a question for you.
It's not a question of Mr. Russell, actually.
All right.
I'm wondering at the
I
end of the
beg your
speech whether
pardon,
people
Mr.
may
Russell.
realize which side he was on. But my question is of staff in answer to the $5 million insurance. Could staff add where we're going with that so there's no misunderstanding?
Commissioner Lalonde.
Yes, the practice has been to ask for a proof of $2 million of liability insurance. The report that we structured mentioned that we would be expecting between $2 and $5 million. The $2 million minimum that's in place now will remain in place, as has been the practice for renting those halls.
Thank you. I just wanted to get that clarified.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Mr. Russell. Madam Clerk, the next delegation. Councillor Demoff. Sorry. Mr. Russell, you have more business. Councillor Demoff.
Sorry to bring you back down.
That's all right.
Through you, I wanted to thank you for all your efforts in this. I know you've spent a great deal of time working on bringing groups together. And I just want to make sure that you understand that when we vote for the Administrative Services Committee minutes tonight, we will be adopting option 4.
Good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Is Craig Schiller, West River Residents Association, regarding the room booking procedures. Again, item 8 of the Administrative Services Committee meeting.
Welcome, Mr. Schiller. Council looks forward to your information.
Councillors, Mr. Mayor, my name is Craig Schiller and I'm the president of the West River Residents Association. Since you have just announced that you are going to be voting in favor of option 4, I have nothing to say except well done and good evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schiller. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Is Liz Benyon, Oakville Green Conservation Association, regarding room booking procedures, item 8 of the Administrative Services Committee, as well as the draft Oakville Wildlife Strategy and the 2011 Emerald Ash Borer Management Program being items 4 and 6 of the Community Services Committee agenda.
Welcome, Ms. Bennion. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you. Despite all of that, this is going to be less than 10 minutes. So first, I would like to thank the Administrative Services Committee for approving the motion by Mayor Burton to allow charitable and nonprofit groups to continue to use rooms at Town Hall for free. We're very appreciative of the use of this space, and we believe it shows Oakville's support for all the work charities and nonprofits do to make Oakville a more livable community. We are also very pleased that the procedural issue has been also addressed, and we would like to thank all the councillors who took an active interest in this issue and who helped bring it to a successful resolution. Second, I would like to thank the Community Services Committee for approving a motion to fund the Emerald Ash Borer Management Plan over the next 10 years. With 200,000 ash trees in Oakville, we have a lot to lose. We are appreciative of the efforts of Oakville's Forestry Department in trying to address this issue, and we hope the federal and provincial government will heed the need of Oakville and other municipalities for funding to fight this destructive pest. On the issue of the draft Oakville Wildlife Strategy, we're here just to thank everybody tonight, pretty much. We would like to thank Donna Doyle and the staff of the Environmental Policy Department, who did an excellent job in consulting with the community and relevant organizations outside the community and internal departments in drafting this policy. We find it to be relevant and comprehensive. And Oakville Green would like to speak to 5 specific areas. The first is making wildlife education and outreach a priority. In our work in the community, it is clear that many residents do not have a good understanding of urban wildlife and of the importance of protecting and enhancing biodiversity. Oakville Green has produced a number of resources to address this, including a brochure titled Go Wild, Oakville's Urban Wildlife, which is aimed at adults, a brochure entitled 20 Things I Can Do to Protect the Earth, which is aimed at children, and numerous environmental education programs for students from preschool to grade 12 that we have delivered in more than 20 schools over the past 2 years. If we can help in any way with the wildlife education and public outreach, we would be pleased to do so. We also applaud the suggestion for enhanced wildlife bylaws, especially a bylaw that would prohibit the feeding of wildlife. 3, Oakville Green strongly endorses the recommendation to designate additional lands as environmentally sensitive areas, as per the recommendations in the Halton Natural Areas Inventory, prioritizing the restoration of publicly owned land south of Dundas and identifying and mapping key wildlife corridors and habitats as per the province's 2010 Natural Heritage Manual. Several members of our Natural Heritage and Biodiversity Committee, such as Dr. Pedro Pereira, may be able to lend expertise in this area. 4, while we applaud the idea of reducing the impact of roads through the road ecology program, we also feel it necessary to point out the unavoidable fact that roads destroy habitat and the species that depend on it, and that the impact of a road, in terms of the negative impact of noise, runoff, and loss of animals to roadkill, goes far beyond the impact of losing the habitat. Instead of trying to mitigate the damage, the town and the region should try to avoid building new roads, especially through sensitive areas like Glenorchy Conservation Area, 16 Mile Creek, and provincial ANSIs. 5, we were pleased that the Wildlife Working Group established to facilitate the draft wildlife policy cut across several town departments, including operations, parks, and engineering. This inclusive approach will hopefully ensure that the wildlife policy becomes embedded in all areas of the town's operation. And finally, we'd like to say that the key to the success of this policy will be how it's implemented. For instance, we know threatened bobolinks are in the area through which the Burnham-Thorpe extension is planned. How will this policy affect their protection? In what way will the town work with the region of Halton that is responsible for several planned road expansions in parts of our community to see that the good intentions expressed in the policy in terms of protecting wildlife and biodiversity come to fruition? And will we see suitable eco-passages built in areas where we know they are needed, such as Nyagawa Road, that is currently being widened through a significant part of the natural heritage system that is now teeming with wildlife? In conclusion, Oakville Green applauds environmental policy staff for a fine report, and we look forward to Council implementing policies, bylaws, and procedures to ensure the policy lives up to its promise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bennion. Thank you for your information. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Is Beverly Rockcliffe regarding options for mitigating motorcycles, item 9 of the Administrative Services Committee agenda.
Welcome, Mrs. Rockcliffe. Council looks forward to your information. If you just step a little closer to the microphone, you'll be heard much better.
Mayor Burton and members of council, I would just like to, I have a point to make. My son's going to follow through with a lot more comprehensive speech. I just want to clarify one thing, and that was the other night at the meeting, and it's directed to you, Mayor Burton. When we had all spoken, you, and the meeting was closed to us, you asked your solicitor regarding development in any area. Is it not the developer's responsibility to notify owners as they purchase in those areas as to what is going on in the area as far as building or what's coming up in the way of development? When we purchased those properties in 2006, the late fall of 2006, my son bought one, I bought one, and my other son bought one. We knew, I've been in Oakville for 60 years, I knew what was in the area. We never expected what was going to happen in 2 years from then. It's been nothing but hell for the people that live in that area. And calls to the police, I mean, what has been tolerated there is uncalled for. And still, there is this bylaw that you're trying to pass, I don't feel is going to do anything for us in that area. It is my opinion that the approach will not solve the problem. Our problem of loitering, bikers, prostitution, stabbings, night after night, there are police calls to the area, if you looked at the police call, but we've stopped doing it now because Kathy promised that she would try to do something about it. What you're proposing is not going to help us. If you don't narrow in on Tim Hortons, the TDL group to do something, then it's not going to help. And I cannot see provincial law being passed to regulate motorbikes. I cannot see that. I think that's, in the real world, that would be wonderful. In a perfect world, be wonderful. But it's not going to happen. And that's not going to help us anyway. It is my opinion that, just when I go on here, I know you want corporate head offices like TDL, but at what expense to the community? You also want regentrification of areas. This is a very poor example of what the neighbors have to put up with, and no protection to the neighbor at all for what he has to go through. I want to make it very clear that you are proposing something will not help us. My suggestion is that the TDL group should not be allowed to operate beyond 10 p.m. I realize this is a change in their agreement with their town permit, but Town Hall have already made changes to our way of living and the residents that live in that area. Their people's homes, their environment's been changed. They're violating the peace and quiet of families. This should not be allowed to happen. So where do I go from here now? 5. This bylaw before you, I've spoken about that anyway, before you was simply a smokescreen in my opinion, to say that we tried to do really something for the community, but it's not going to help us. I'm from another planet. This may happen, but I cannot believe it. I would like to see the town do something about the noise and the violation of peace and quiet to a nice neighborhood. That's my request. My son has the rest that he will go through with. Thank you very much.
Councillor Adams has a question for you.
I'm sorry, I don't have a question, but I would like to go on record. My wife does work at TDL. Tonight, we're dealing with an issue on motorcycle noise, one issue which is of concern to my community as well. As a result, I'm not going to be declaring a conflict of interest on the matter, but should somebody else wish to deal with a TDL issue, I will declare an interest in that.
Thank you, Councillor Adams, for your clarification. Thank you, Ms. Rockcliffe, for your information. Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation?
The next delegation is Craig Bell, Canadians Advocating Political Participation, CAP Oakville, regarding room booking procedures, item 8 of the Administrative Services Committee agenda.
Welcome, Mr. Bell. Council looks forward to your information.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors. On behalf of CAP Oakville, Canadians Advocating Political Participation, we prefer to waive our privilege of speaking this evening in light of the fact that the council will be supporting option 4 in the proposed legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the time you've given back. Madam Clerk, the next delegation
Is Blaine Rockcliffe regarding options for mitigating noise from motorcycles, again, item 9 of the Administrative Services Committee agenda.
Mr. Rockcliffe, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you very much. At the last meeting, I had a copy of some photographs. I made copies for everybody on Town Council. I don't know if I can pass these around or not. I'm just going to keep one. I'll speak to the pictures first if I can when everyone has them, and then I'll go on to my little diatribe here. So the first picture in the little pamphlet here, this is just taken from down the St. Lawrence Market in Toronto. I just saw this sign in 2009. I thought it was a great sign, maybe even something that we can put up in our neighborhood, just to remind people that, you know, this is a quiet residential area, and if they could respect that. The second picture, again, most of these pictures are taken from 2009, when the situation around our neighborhood grew intolerable. There was street racing at one point. Oh, they can actually see them? Oh, perfect. I'm a school teacher. I love to have this option in school. It'd be great. So here you see skid marks taking off, cars taking off, or motorcycles taking off. Again, a daily occurrence in 2009, but it's continued in 2010 as well. I no longer live at 108 Wilson, which is directly across the street from the Tim Hortons. I live now on Lakeshore Road. We're just building a house on Chisholm Street right now, so we're waiting for that house to be built. So we're renting a place on 104, but we're still disturbed nightly by the noise, especially in the summer months. Again, this was right after a call was made to the police. Bike got right up on the sidewalk and decided to skid out right in front of our place in 2009. This is what we looked out of when we looked at our front door. Was these just right into the driveway of Tim Hortons. I'll skip through to some other pictures that might be a little bit more revealing. Here you see this is an average night in the summer. This picture was taken again in 2009, but this is what it would look like every day of the summer on a hot day in June, July, August, and even into September. Similar pictures here as well. Just a shot from our rooftop. It didn't turn out that great, but you can see the traffic and the congestion at the Tim Hortons. This was after an incident. There was a fight that broke out, and the police were summoned. You can see the motorcycles all the way down the street. So police are called there. The police actually don't show up anymore. I think they're sick of dealing with the issue. This is from early June. 2009 as well. There's a stabbing there that night. There was 5 police cruisers that came and a paramedic truck as well. And then just more pictures of skid marks and things. This was just a picture of the paramedic truck. It's very difficult to see. And then again, just more pictures of what it would look like. You can see the bikes all the way down the street. And then again, they claim that these people are customers of Tim Hortons. But we have them here drinking Starbucks coffee. So I'd just like to start by thanking you for letting me speak here tonight, Mayor Burton and members of council. This issue came about in response to ongoing concerns in the area of Wilson and Lakeshore Road in Oakville. This bylaw proposal is not addressing the real issue, which is one of loitering and disruption that is out of character for our neighborhood. Our neighborhood has put up with constant noise of motorcycles and ongoing issues of public disturbances that have gone unchecked at Tim Hortons' location at 49 Lakeshore Road West for 4 years. When my family bought here in 2006, we were happy to have a Timmy's across the street, and were some of its best customers. But by 2008, the atmosphere had started to change, and by 2009, the situation was unbearable. It took an episode of violence when someone was stabbed there in June of 2009 for TDL to stand up and take notice, but this quickly passed. And since pleas to the franchisee and various levels of TDL fall on deaf ears, not to mention pleas to our town officials, including bylaw and the police. At one point after I was harassed and filed a complaint, I was told by the officer that responded that I should take my dog elsewhere and walk him. This is a corporation that has been allowed to operate above the law and has no interest in being a positive corporate citizen within our neighborhood. The only thing that matters to TDL is their bottom line. This is the only establishment in downtown Oakville that is allowed to operate 24/7. It is also the only establishment that has a drive-through in a predominantly residential area. For years, Kerr Street had an embarrassing connotation tied to it, but in the last 10 years, this area has been revived with development and great little shops that have attracted families such as my own to regenerate this wonderful neighborhood. We have the opportunity to make a permanent and positive change here and to rid Oakville of the old Kerr Street stigmatism for good and create an area that we should all be proud of to call part of our community. The first step should be to put restrictions on the area from Forsyth to Brent along Lakeshore. I would also implore the town and members of council to solve the problem at its first point of contact, the Tim Hortons at 49 Lakeshore Road. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ratcliffe, for your information. Councillor Elger.
Just tell me exactly what you want done at that location.
In that location, ideally, what I'd like to see done, the Tim Hortons shut down. But I know that's unreasonable to ask. But the drive-through, I think, should be shut down, and there should be hours. It doesn't need to be a 24-hour restaurant. There's nothing else downtown Oakville that I can think of from Allen Street to probably 3rd Line that's allowed to operate 24 hours a day. That's what I'd like to see done. Restrictions put on the hours and the drive-through potentially shut down.
I wasn't at the admin services meeting because I was on a different committee, but can we do that?
Mr. Carr. Sounds like a legal question to me. Town Solicitor Doug Carr.
Quite frankly, Your Worship, I'd like some time to consider it. My initial response is I'm not sure that we would have the authority to do that retroactively.
Thank you very much. Councillor, I think you'll have to be satisfied with that for now.
Yeah, no, that drive-through at that location has been a problem, and this isn't the first time I've heard about it. So I was just trying to understand what the gentleman wants and also what we can actually do. Thank you.
Councillor Khan.
Very much. We went over this last time at the ASC meeting as well.
Right.
And you pointed out, you raised issues with, stabbings and prostitutions and, fights breaking out. But the motion that we have before us today is about noise pollution from motorcycles.
I understand.
So, and I'm sympathetic to your concerns, but what's your position on the motion at hand? Do you believe that it's going to alleviate some of the concerns?
I think if, I think it could. I think if it's honestly enforced, it certainly could. My concern is that for years, the police don't respond to us anymore. Bylaw doesn't respond to us anymore. I just want these people to realize what they're doing to a neighborhood. So if they can take some sort of, if it can be brought to their attention, some recognition of what they're doing, that'd be great. If you can start by localizing it, put it in our neighborhood first, test our neighborhood first. So do this stuff, have it patrolled. It's not a vast area to patrol. Have police sitting there with their decibel machines or the bylaw sitting there. Because when they come after the fact, it's no good. They have to stay there. We offered the police as well an opportunity and bylaw as well to sit in our driveway that would be directly across the street from the drive-through. If they could sit there, all the people in our townhouse area, they agreed to that. But no one came. The offer was never followed through on. And I think if you were to localize it in that area, start with that, and then we'll see. Maybe there will be some positive change that we can spread out from there. But until something is done in that area with that specific location, nothing's gonna change. This is the point of contact. This is the place where the bikers go. This is where they congregate. If we can stop them here, we'll be in good shape.
So just to clarify, in other words, you're supporting the motion to control noise coming from motorcycles,
Yes.
hoping that it will alleviate some of the indirect concerns that you've raised.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Khan.
Councillor Dudek.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, through to Councillor Elgar, the approval of that drive-through that Tim Hortons was done before I came on council. In fact, I think you might have been on council at the time, but the Tim Hortons being at that location has been a problem from the get-go in terms of close proximity to residential neighborhoods. We've dealt with bylaw, police, as Mr. Rockcliffe has indicated. We've even met with legal representation from the Tim Hortons group as well to try to mitigate as best we can. And bylaw and legal's response has, there's nothing that we can do in terms of private property telling them who and who cannot park on private property and who can use their establishment. But that doesn't mean we won't keep trying.
Just out of curiosity, can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
I know growing up in Oakville, I was born and raised in Oakville, and I remember places like Perro's Place and The Hip, bars that were operating near residential areas where the police constantly went and enforced noise bylaws. And eventually they just find them until they couldn't stay open. I don't know what the difference is between a bar downtown Oakville that's causing noise and a Tim Hortons location that's causing noise. I don't know the difference. So if one can be regulated, why can't the other?
Well, we'll see. Thank you very much for your
Thanks, Mayor
information.
Burton. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Is Nikki Rockcliffe regarding options for mitigating motorcycle noise or noise from motorcycles. Again, item 9.
That's my wife. She's taking care of our little guy tonight. We couldn't find a babysitter, so sorry.
That's good.
All right, thank you.
The next delegation would then be Janet Haslett-Thiel regarding bylaw 2011-053, the amendment to the sign bylaw 2006-005, and the room booking procedures, items 5 and 8 of the Administrative Services Committee agenda.
Welcome, Mrs. Haslett-Thiel. Council looks forward to your delegation.
Good evening. I'll reserve my comments on the room booking because I understand that you're going to choose option 4, so that'll save us some time. I'm the president of the Joshua Creek Residents Association. I'm here tonight on behalf of our board and our members to once again implore you to not ban election signage on public property. To prepare for tonight's delegation, we asked ourselves some questions. Why do we need a ban? Who benefits from the passing of a ban? Are there other alternatives? What broader message and impact could this ban have on our community? The rationalizations we have heard from some of you advocating for the ban are just not compelling. I hope you reconsider your position after hearing our views. This new bylaw, if passed, gives a clear advantage to the incumbents. It is not respectful of the importance of encouraging and supporting new entrants in their desire to be in public service. It does not value the importance of getting the public engaged in elections. Why does this potential ban favor incumbents? Incumbents have name recognition, the most critical component of a grassroots municipal campaign. You also have email addresses of constituents. If the new candidate cannot advertise their interest in serving the community on major roadways and public areas, they will have a significant disadvantage. Without signs on major thoroughfares, people who lead busy lives do not know who is running. And trust me, we all lead busy lives. Many do not make reading the Beaver a priority. They see names on signs, and then they start to ask questions. When new candidates knock on the resident's door, there is no name recognition, and a few minutes at a door will rarely get you an endorsement for a sign on your lawn. As incumbents, you know this. You have a clear advantage of more private lawn signs just by virtue of being an incumbent. You may have earned that privilege, but you have an obligation to uphold the principle of fair play for new entrants, not to create bylaws that give you an advantage. If a new entrant does not have many private signs, how do they get people to know they're running? They will have to pay for larger, more expensive newspaper advertising to get their name out. A few of you are under the impression that the ban will make it a level playing field by reducing the sign wars on public property, and emphasize that this will help the new entrant because he or she will save signage costs and need less volunteers. Need I remind you, one ad in the Beaver costs $4,000. A candidate can buy over 2,000 signs with that kind of money. And all of you use signs because they are less expensive. Some advocates are saying signs are a distraction. But why does town council sell signage to for medians to businesses? Remember Oakville Blooms? Why do businesses want signage on medians? Because they want name recognition. The most important process you could ever advertise is an election and our candidates. Individuals say, well, the election can be fought using social media. Social media starts with name recognition and with lists. It takes time to get a Twitter and Facebook following. Again, this favors the incumbent. The average person sees multiple signs for a candidate, and then they might Google or go to the town's website. New entrants need name recognition. Well, what about the environment? Responsible candidates collected signs after the election, a municipal election last time, and recycled the metal parts. If it is the environment you're concerned about, then challenge or regulate candidates to use recyclable signs versus banning them. Then even private signs will be better for the planet. If you believe that strongly in the environmental impact, you can run without signs, but to ask a new entrant to do so is blatantly unfair. What about safety and vandalism? It is the candidate's responsibility to lead and manage their volunteers. If they can't make sure that their volunteers act with the public and their own safety in mind, by not putting up signs during busy times or at night or not securing the signs properly, that raises questions about the candidate and how will they manage town affairs. Let's not take that responsibility away from them, because it is their responsibility to manage their volunteers. It is unfortunate that some people do denigrate signs, but that is not a compelling reason to ban signs from public property. Another argument is that in Burlington they banned public property election signs and the incumbents lost. Does that make banning signs on public property right? Individuals know that many incumbents across Ontario lost in the last election. The reasons were many. To suggest that because an incumbent lost in Burlington means there's a level playing field, well, that's just not accurate. So why are MP and MPP supporting a ban? Let me think about this. They're well-known incumbents, and they benefit from party advertising. Municipal candidates and school trustees do not have a party to support their candidacy, nor do they have a leader to tie their aspirations to. Municipal candidates, as you well know, stand alone with their volunteer record and their business experience to seek to serve our community. No head honcho to draw people to hear their views or support the cost of their campaigns. For our current incumbent MP and MPP to suggest they are fine without signs just reinforces to me that incumbents know they'll have an advantage if signs are just left for private lawns. If a new entrant wants to go without signs, as I hear one might, they are clearly from a larger party and not running in a municipal election. Let's focus on the positive. Oakville had 10% greater voter turnout than Burlington, 20% greater than Mississauga. Even if signs only play a small part in ensuring people take their civic responsibility seriously, you should not pass a bylaw that could have a negative impact on voter turnout. We need to do whatever it takes to ensure that people take their civic responsibility seriously. In fact, we need to increase the engagement of our residents in the process and help us stand out as a community that we are aware and supportive of the democratic process. So what about reasonable alternatives? Regulate the number of signs to create a fair playing field. Regulate recycling. Consider higher fines to make clear to volunteers and the candidates that you're serious about fair play. Don't allow them on medians, just on the side of the roads. Invest more in bylaw enforcement during the election to deal with non-compliance issues. These are reasonable alternatives. In other words, invest in democracy. An election sign is a symbol of democracy. It is a celebration of our right to vote and our responsibility to participate. Of all the places it should be on public property. Public property is our property. Signage on it ensures that everyone who is a registered candidate can have visibility and access to the opportunity to be considered for an elected position. It is a sign of respect for the principle of equal access to the opportunity to participate as a candidate, allowing many people to see their desire to serve, not just a few. Symbols matter. That is why we wear poppies and celebrate Remembrance Day. Our grandfathers hope we will always remember, lest we forget. Election signs are a symbol of democracy, and signage during the election is a small price to pay for the value and importance they have in protecting the roots of democracy. On behalf of JCRA tonight, I ask that you not ban election signs on public property and to invest time in solutions that will not undermine the fairness of our election process. And in closing, I'd ask, if you do decide to vote tonight, that a councillor ask that the vote be recorded. Thank you.
Thank you for your information. You have drawn at least one question. Councillor Kahn.
You said that you're speaking for JCRA today. Did you have a meeting where this was discussed and they asked you to report back to council?
We had spoken about it after the municipal election. We had an email exchange with the board, and the majority, in fact, I believe it's totally unanimous, board felt that it was the right decision to continue to make it clear that there should be no ban, and we also circulated it to our members to make sure that they were in support.
Councillor Dumoff.
Thank you very much for coming out tonight. One thing I should clarify, signs are not allowed now on medians. They're on the boulevards. Where do you get your information that you cannot get signs on private property if you're not an incumbent?
You could get a sign, so when you knock at the door and you're a brand new entrant, knock at my door, you'll get a few minutes of my time. Will you get a sign on my lawn because you've given me 3 minutes, maybe 5, to tell me about your platform? My neighbors and I are not going to give you a sign because you've knocked on my door and I've given you 5 minutes of my time. They're going to want to do more digging and get to know you more. They're going to look to see that you've actively out in the community and advertising and stating your interest. And in fact, in the last election, one of the school trustees didn't have signs up, and some of our individuals around us said, he obviously isn't very committed.
Well, with all due respect, I did ask for signs, and I had 2 minutes at the door, and I did get 200 sign locations. So it is possible to convey your message quickly. I was not the incumbent going door to door.
So your neighborhood's different than ours, then?
Well, and the only other thing I would clarify is you spoke about cost of advertising, and I think you don't have to advertise in the Oakville Beaver. Again, I did not. And we have 2 newspapers in Oakville. There's North Oakville Today and the Oakville Beaver. And for the councillors north of the QEW, they can choose to advertise in another paper, which is not as expensive.
And are you telling me that it is less expensive than a sign?
I didn't take out an ad in the Oakville Beaver at all. So you don't have to advertise in the Oakville Beaver to win.
No, but you do have to get name recognition.
Well, Council, our custom is to seek information through questions. This may be straying off into argument, and I wonder if you have any questions for the delegation. All right, thank you. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Worship. Excuse me. Could you, you touched on the issue of recycling. Can you clarify, because I was making note of what you said prior, and I didn't catch exactly what you said. Could you clarify your point on recycling?
That you could regulate the requirement to have a recyclable sign. You could regulate recycling after an election. You could create incentives for recycling of signs. There's a large number of ways to do it. And in fact, the Green Party uses signs, for those of you who aren't aware of it, and their signs are generally recyclable for obvious reasons. And the encouragement comes from both their philosophy, but you could regulate that.
Are you aware of, you've said you've done some research. Are you aware of signage that is reasonably priced and recyclable? Because I have not found any.
I'm aware that the Green Party, through some of the research I did have recyclable signs. They're not a rich party, but I do not know the cost.
Okay. I'm curious about your, you made a comment about the Beaver, the Oakville Beaver, and you said the advertising is $4,000. What's that based on?
It's a half page, because if you don't go big, you might as well go home. And it is a one-time event. You can get it down to $3,600 if you do 4 insertions over the course of the election.
Okay. Well, I don't want to be argumentative, but I took out a half-page ad and it was $700 in the last election. So.
Well, you can check their posted rates. You might have gotten a deal.
Maybe they like you best. Councillor Khan.
I just want clarification on your position here, because it's something interesting that Councillor Demoff raised, and she's correct. She's one of the challengers that was elected, but it's not your position here that it's impossible to be elected. It's your position that it's very difficult, especially given the fact that 11 out of the 13 members of council were re-elected.
I would say that you've got my position totally accurate. It's at a disadvantage. It's not that it's not possible, but it's at a significant disadvantage, and that should be enough for you to say, no, this isn't the right bylaw.
Councillor Duddick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for your presentation tonight, as well as the other evening. So if we were to consider not banning the use of election signs on public property, I believe I heard a couple of times during your presentation that you would be supportive of looking at other options to possibly regulate some of the, what shall I say, higher ranked problems, whether it's safety or the environment or things of that nature. Is that correct?
Yeah, regulation is a viable alternative, so long as it doesn't undermine the democratic process.
Thank you.
Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Ms. Hazlitt-Thiel. A number of the concerns that have been expressed, as well as environmental, is for the visual pollution as well as safety. Would you have a concern with a reduced number of weeks that they're up, or some way of having a reduced number of signs?
I would say that a reduced number of sign is a much better alternative. A reduced number of weeks puts at risk people's awareness, and nothing should be done to reduce voter turnout. And I have to tell you that I take an immense exception to the word visual pollution when it comes to an election sign. My grandfather fought in Paris. I've stood on the beaches in Normandy. They didn't do what they did. to allow election signs to be referred to as visual pollution.
Councillor Elgar.
Thank you for coming out and speaking to us tonight, because I wasn't at the Admin Services meeting because of the other meeting. But you mentioned regulation of the number, and I'm trying to figure out how you would do that, because Ward 4 is more than double if you add Ward 1 and Ward 2 together. So, I'm just wondering, where would you go with that as far as regulating number? Would it be on the number of voters in a ward? So that you have fairness? Because I can see this isn't going to go down very good for Councillor Lapworth and myself.
Okay, so I can't tell you that I have an exact answer. I'd say that it deserves a great deal of thought around the, is it the number of voters, or is it the square miles within the boundaries that you have? I just think that there's a solution here, and regulating the number is a viable option. It may mean that one ward gets 200 and another gets 400. It's the number on which you are competing. So if you get 400 and your new entrant gets 400, to me that's fair. It's not whether or not one ward versus the other. Now the mayors, that might be a whole other can of worms, and good luck with that.
Councillor Knoll.
Thank you. Do you frequent the website oakville.com at all?
Yes.
Okay, there is a poll on oakville.com right now, which they've been running for a while. It was just drawn to my attention today, and it shows that 68% of Oakville residents favor the banning of public property election signs. Do you have a comment on that?
I would say that the toughest decision you make as leaders is to stand alone and hold up democracy when vanity sometimes stands in our way.
Okay, the second question I have for you is, when we're talking about the enshrinement of the right and to run and to ensure a level playing field or fairness for challenger candidates, would you agree that financial barriers stop or at least limit the ability of challengers to enter a race and to be successful?
Well, I think that the way elections are set up, there is a financial hurdle for anyone to get into the race.
Right.
Where that bar is seems to change over time. Signs go up in cost, advertising goes up in cost, et cetera. Is there a financial barrier to enter for any new entrant? Sure. It's up to us to try and make it as easy as possible to bring diverse voices to the leadership.
Okay, but if that's our goal, then how can we, if we're putting barriers in front of people to make the process of running for election expensive, such as creating this competition, how do we then achieve the goal of making public office accessible to whoever chooses to run, notwithstanding their financial barriers, so that we can have an appropriate demographic around this table? If we gentrify the process of municipal politics, you're not going to have a representative democracy in your community. How would you address that?
Councillor, your question is so far removed from the matter before us. Wouldn't this be a matter for another occasion?
Your Worship, I don't think it is, because part of the argument, and the delegate mentioned a reference the financial cost that, and I believe she was picking up on something I said at ASC during her delegation. So I'm simply asking, in terms of how can you justify perpetuating a sign war, a very expensive sign war, as a way to justify I guess, ease of access if you're not going to provide other opportunities for those who can't necessarily afford to get into the race? I think it's a valid question.
I think it's argument. She's already told you that the other measures available to candidates are more expensive in her view. And it seems to me that you have to accept her information as her belief. I don't think we get anywhere by arguing with our delegates, but go ahead, let's see where you go.
I'll try to rephrase it without sounding argumentative, because that's not my goal. I'm truly trying to explore information, because to be honest with Your Worship, this was not an easy decision for me to make. I spent 10 years arguing against doing this. It's only been the last few years that I've had, or the last year, that I've even been on this issue. So I'm going to rephrase the question, try to be less argumentative. You've done some research, and I'd like to understand, so part of your goal is to make sure that the accessibility of elections to challengers is there, so that people who wish to challenge incumbents can challenge freely without the when they don't have the advantage of incumbency. So you've talked about election signs. How do you respond to that issue that, the election sign portion of a budget in many cases around this table is 1/3 of what we spend? Challenger or incumbent. How do you justify your position based on that?
There'll always be a cost to entry to running for a public office. Your job is to try and keep it within a reasonable range so a citizen can put forward their name. It's not for me to tell you what that number is. I would tell you you shouldn't. What I'm asking you to do is recognize that name recognition is the most critical part of grassroots municipal elections. And name recognition requires advertising. There are multiple vehicles to advertise. Signs are one of them. If you choose to ban signs on public property, you're taking away a viable alternative that people use that is relatively inexpensive, depending on the number of signs you choose to limit in comparison to others.
Okay, last question. Promise won't be argumentative. The last question is, so obviously your association spent some time on this, and I appreciate that because it is a tough decision, or a tough issue. Do you have any other advice? Have you thought of any other alternatives that we might be prepared to consider? And this is a compound question. And the second part is, if we were to defer this tonight, for example, and review it further to look at those alternatives, would you be interested, or would your association be interested in providing feedback to such a process?
Well, I'll answer the last part first. Yes, we'd always be willing to engage in a discussion about ways to make something that's going to support the democratic process and do what we need to do. In terms of, what was the earlier part of the question?
Whether you're
Alzheimer's
in the research and the discussions, you've heard a couple things about limiting signs or proximity. Do you have any other suggestions or any more advice for us tonight?
I think that, as I said, I think you can regulate the number, and you have to figure out that formula to make it right, but regulating the number immediately answers your question about fair play. You're allowed 400, I'm allowed 400. If somebody chooses not to buy 400, that's their choice, but they can't buy 800, which might help solve your problem about sign wars.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you very much for your delegation.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. I've lost count of how many repeat at-bats we got going here. Councillor Khan?
You've taken front stage here. This is just going back to what Councillor Knoll had raised about the cost of election and how expensive it can get. I just want to know, do you appreciate and do you understand that candidates have a spending limit for each riding so that wealth can't hijack an election? Are you aware of that?
Yes.
And are you also familiar and understand that candidates can actually go out and raise money to avoid some of the issues related to, funding for an election?
Sure, but I also recognize that a new entrant will find that much harder to do.
I think we're done both questioning and debating you. Thank you very much.
These are my comments. I brought copies just in case.
We appreciate that very much. Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation?
The next delegation is Michelle Fisher regarding options for mitigating noise from motorcycles. Again, item 9 of the Administrative Services Committee.
Ms. Fisher, welcome. Take your time. Council appreciates you coming. We look forward to your information. If you move a little bit over to the microphone, everyone will hear you better.
Thank you. Once again, I commend the town for being willing to address the issue of motorcycle noise in Oakville. I don't think that motorcycles are the problem per se. I'm sure that all of you know at least one person who has a motorcycle and is a very proud owner of it and loves it. I think the problem is the retrofitted mufflers, the ones that are fitted after the motorbike is bought. It makes a great big noise when you're revving it and as you're gunning it down the street. Now, while the police have indicated that they may not be able to monitor this problem town-wide or region-wide, it would surely be possible to start small and to target the areas of most concern, these being largely residential areas. I urge you to move forward with this issue and therefore continue to create a more livable Oakville.
Thank you for your information. Other questions? Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
The next delegation is Katie Thiel regarding bylaw 2011-053, the amendment to the sign bylaw, which was item 5 of the Administrative Services Committee agenda.
Welcome, Ms. Thiel. Council always appreciates any time a younger member of the community is willing to come face us. We look forward to your information.
Thank you. Tonight I would like to ask you, why are we here at Town Council debating on election signs? Is it public service, the democratic process, or what all our friends are doing? Councilors, why did you first run for council? My hope is for love and belief in the democratic process. And yes, election signs are part of this process. Since grade 6, I've participated in the youth vote and am a member of my school's Mall UN and debate team because I have a faith in democracy. I can't wait until I turn 18 to gain my right to vote. And although it may only be one vote, it is democracy at work. As election signs down Ford Drive is democracy at work. I am proud during election time to see election signs and the wide variety of people seizing the opportunity of public service. Yes, public service, as it is public land we are discussing. Some people say that we put lots and lots of controls on what we can and can't do in the election process. But we must ask ourselves, what is the intent of these controls? There are regulations to protect democracy. We cannot use public money for individual campaigns because that's an unfair advantage to the incumbent. In the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, we are guaranteed the freedom of media communication and assured that every individual is equal before and under the law. Does this bylaw equally benefit all parties? You may say signs only benefit the richer candidate. Then I ask the council to regulate and maintain rather than outlaw. Here we have the opportunity to be innovative in our process, to develop real solutions, which we should support in government and society. I asked my driving instructor her view on election signs, and the response I received was that that is how she knew there was an election, and that is how she chooses to vote. Then I asked about safety, and she said, everyone should know we only glance and return our eyes to the road. There are only a few words on signs, and if that is considered a distraction, then this complaint is kind of ridiculous. The only negative response I received was due to signs on street corners blocking the view of oncoming traffic. And to that I say, election signs must be 3 meters away from the street corner. And don't tell me this is too hard to regulate with all the candidates self-monitoring. And it's very easy for bylaw to investigate complaints. And if we do, what does that say? What does this all say? That we're not willing to do the work, put in the time and thought our town deserves? Then we are led to, are we here because that's what our friends are doing? Because of Burlington and Mississauga? I sincerely hope not. I am a citizen of Oakville. I do not want Burlington bylaws because I live in Oakville, and this is Oakville Town Council. I hope we can stand individually strong in our opinions and legislation, but we must if we must look to other towns and cities, then why don't we look to Toronto, who during this year's election created a program in which all election signs could be dropped off at designated locations and recycled through a special process. Each election is different. Any statistics based off a federal election are irrelevant to municipal elections because the dynamics are completely different. In a federal election, there is national campaigns and main party recognition, which sways and leads to votes, while a municipal election is based on name recognition and the individual. And signs are name recognition, which the new candidate does not already have. And if we're here due to vanity, then I may lose a little faith in society. But what I'm led to believe is we're here due to flimsy arguments on environment and safety, which I can easily find solutions to. So tonight I ask you to truly lead, to be creative and innovative in the process, make real solutions, not just prohibit, and tell you if you believe in public service, then signs should remain on public land. So when I drive down the road this fall, Will I see a silent society or the lively colors of my country's democracy? Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there questions? Thank you very much for your...
I have paper.
We would love to have copies of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Is Danny Morowitz, President of the Chartwell Maple Grove Residents Association, regarding the sign bylaw amendment, item 5 of the Administrative Services Committee agenda.
Ms. Moritz, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you, Your Worship, honorable councillors. I will be quite brief, actually. I doubt that there is anyone in this town who finds election signs to be aesthetically pleasing, unless they have a narcissistic need to see their name in print. Yet, these signs do serve an important purpose, as so eloquently outlined by the previous speakers, and I'm not even going to touch on that. We at Chartwell Maple Grove Residents Association are of the opinion that election signs in public places should not be banned. We do believe, however, that they should be considerably restricted in number and location. Perhaps staff could suggest an alternative policy that reduces the gross proliferation of election signage permissible under current bylaws and yet allows a decent opportunity for new candidates to achieve name recognition in a fair and simple manner. Restrict signage to specific locations, perhaps only, such as only on defined main arteries. Ensure that distances from entranceways and intersections are maintained for proper access to local businesses and for safety. Restrict the size and the numbers of signs per candidate allowed in any one location. I don't know why you have to have 15 signs that have the same name on them in one location. How about just one each? A creative solution should be found which will somewhat appease both sides on this issue, and compromise is a good first step. So I ask you to look at a compromise. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morowitz, for your information. And if you don't have copies?
I can send it in, no.
It's very nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next delegation, please.
Is Hart Jansen regarding the amendment to the sign bylaw and options for mitigating noise from motorcycles, being items 5 and 9 of the Administrative Services Committee agenda.
Welcome, Mr. Jansen. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you. I'm just going to address the motorcycle noise issue tonight. I'm not sure. I did send in a suggestion earlier on to my Ward 2 councillors on this issue, and I'm looking for the West Harbour Residents Association, of which I'm currently president. The Tim Hortons is located within our boundaries, so this is an issue for a lot of the members of the Residents Association, and it has been for some time. So what I'm looking for is an efficient and pragmatic solution to this issue, and I suggested that as an additional option, you might consider having bylaw officers test motorcycles that are parked. Now, it was brought to my attention that you may require some kind of just cause to ask for this testing to be done. And I would propose that there's probably a couple of dozen motorcycles that are responsible for 2/3 of the noise that's generated, certainly on Lakeshore Road. And again, most of those park at either the Tim Hortons or the Starbucks, or probably both. So what you could have citizens provide you with license plates of motorcycles that are particularly loud, and bylaw officers could very efficiently attend the Tim Hortons with a list of plates and take a look and see if any of those potentially offensive vehicles are parked there, and ask for them to be tested because they've received complaints. So I propose this, and again, I don't know the legal ramifications or the details, but I propose this as a possible efficient mechanism to get at the root of this issue.
Thank you very much for your information and your suggestions. Are there questions for Councillor Demoff?
I just wondered if staff could take into consideration the suggestion from Mr. Jansen when they're putting together the bylaw and include that in the recommendation back. And I think we need to be clear, it's not just an issue just at that one location. It's all along Lakeshore Road. I was at a dinner not long ago just south of Lakeshore over in Bronte, and we couldn't hear because of the bikes going by.
If I could just respond to that, what I would suggest is that again, I think a large number of the motorcycles that are generating this noise will frequently be found parked at these locations. So if you can test the motorcycles that are there, I think you'll get rid of a lot of the noise, not just at that location, but that noise would be generated by those same motorcycles everywhere else in town.
Councillor Elgar.
My question is of staff, again, and related to what Mr. Jansen is saying, is I would like to know, do we have the legal ability to do something like that of their personal property?
It's something, through you, Your Worship, to the councillor, that we'll take into consideration in looking at the bylaw. I, again, have serious concerns as to whether or not a municipal law enforcement officer would have that authority.
But at this stage, the motion before council, it really asks staff to go away and prepare something, so all ideas are welcome, and legal and bylaw can suss them as they will. Thank you, Mr. Jansen, for your suggestions and your information. All right, that ends the delegations that we have and brings us, council, to your standing committee reports. And you have before you the Community Services Committee report of June 14th, the Administrative Services Committee report of June 14th, and the confidential report of the closed session of the Administrative Services Committee from June 14th. Councillor Johnston?
I'd be happy to move them all.
Thank you. Councillor Adams?
Could I separate the item on the EAB from the Community Service Committee for the purpose of asking staff a question, please?
Any other separations? Councillor Elgar?
Yeah, I'd like to separate the election signs. I think I heard tonight somebody asked for a recorded vote, and I would ask that we do that recorded vote.
All right. Any others? Actually, election signs are not on the agenda.
Oh, sorry, the sign.
Well, the sign bylaw doesn't have any ban on election signs in it. I would suggest to you that the procedure you might want to follow is a request for, I believe Councillor Duddick is going to ask for a request for report when we get to that section of the agenda. So perhaps you don't want to separate that. All right, I need a seconder for Councillor Johnston, Councillor Elgar, Councillor Adams.
With respect to the item on the sign bylaw, I'm not sure what I'm to understand that Councillor Duddick might be asking for a report on.
She's indicated to me that she plans to ask for to do a request for a report. Why don't I ask her to ask staff to bring back proposed regulations to deal with concerns about election signs. Councillor Duddick.
Gee, that sort of sounds like what I was going to propose. That staff report back with options for council's consideration to regulate election signs on public property. Speaking to basically what we heard tonight, that there may be numerous other options that we can look at to address some of the issues that we've heard from our constituents and concerns that we've heard throughout this process.
Okay, then if that'll include looking at options to reduce the number, size, location, and environmental impact, I'm happy and I don't need to separate the sign bylaw.
Actually, quite honestly, Councillor Adams, I left it very broad.
In order to allow all those things
exactly.
to be. Yeah, that's fine.
Councillor Knoll.
Just to be clear, can I ask a question of the mover of that motion, or is that in order right now?
That motion's not on the floor.
That's what I thought. Okay, so I'll withdraw until that time.
Looking at the agenda, we'll get there very quickly. All right, then I'll call the vote on The reports as moved by Councillor Johnston, seconded by Councillor Elgar, including everything except the EAB report. All in favor? Opposed, if any? They carry. Councillor Adams, you separated the Emerald Ash Borer item.
Thank you. I just have a question of our staff. A constituent of mine asked whether or not we've considered including in our tendering process some form of service or help to homeowners to deal with trees, ash trees on their own private property in the form of fixed rate or better rates through a contractor that the town would be hiring. And I wonder if our staff could comment on how that's been considered and why we may not wish to do that, or how we might wish to consider it in the future.
Commissioner Leonardo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff did look at that, and having reviewed that, staff believe it would be inappropriate to have the contractor hold their prices. Specifically, you can appreciate that this is a public tender with specific scope of work, everything from access to properties, size of trees, location of trees. It's well defined within the public realm, including things like insurance and liability coverage for the municipality, none of which were considered as part of the tender for the private side. So that would be problematic in that sense. Secondly, I think it's important to also recognize that we don't want to be seen as showing any kind of preferential treatment or competing with the private sector on some of these things, especially for those who have not had an opportunity to bid on this type of project. And I guess the third reason that we would not consider this is the potential conflict resolution that may exist if one of our contractors that we would recommend had a dispute with a resident, they may be coming back to us for damages or liability. So for those reasons, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, we did not include that in the tender.
Thank you very much for that information, and I'm happy to move the recommendations from the committee at this point.
Thank you, but it's already moved by Councillor Johnston and Councillor Elgar. You
And
just
I'm happy to
separated
vote on
it.
it.
But I will take that as an invitation to call the vote. All in favor? Opposed, if any? And that too carries. Now, that brings us to the Committee of the Whole. Could we have a mover and seconder resolve in the Committee of the Whole? Councillor Johnston, Councillor Dudek, all in favor? Opposed? We are resolved into Committee of the Whole, and the first discussion item is the 2011-2014 Strategic Work Plan Report. And if we turn our attention to Jane Courtemanche, the Director of Communications and Policy, and Strategy, Policy, and Communications, we will have her report. Ms. Courtemanche.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. What we are doing tonight is tabling with you the strategic plan and draft council work plan for 2011 to 2014. We will be coming back in 2 weeks' time, and this will to give you additional time to review the document and speak to any of your constituents. It's sort of a practice we've adopted in the past. As you will recall, we began this year's process with a session in January with members of council. Since then, the senior management team has met, the executive management team. There's been a lot of time looking at the numerous initiatives that council put forth to craft a plan that would separate out what we could accomplish this year and then the initiatives that we wanted to identify for the rest of the term of council. What the strategic plan does is it sets a direction. We have a future direction through our vision, mission, and values. And certainly, I think you heard that vision reflected back to you many times by members of the public. So I would say that direction is well understood by the community. Your work plan really is something that sets out what this council will be known for and recognized for its duration. But every year you will see an annual work plan that looks at what we're going to achieve that specific year, and that is through the budget and business planning process. So what our overall strategic planning does is it allows us to set a long-term vision. It allows us to set a mid-range work plan, but it also allows us to be very flexible and adapt the plan to emerging priorities. So if new initiatives emerge throughout your term of council, we're back every year so that you can adapt to those emerging issues. So what we'd like to do tonight is just leave the plan with you, and over the next 2 weeks, if you would like to speak with either the CAO, Ray Green, or myself, we'd be happy to take your comments in and reflect it back. As I said, this is the draft, and we will be finalizing it for July 4th. I'll be meeting also with the Chamber of Commerce within that period to get their input as well. And certainly we've tried to reflect the input that we received from the citizen survey, which again helped us to provide input on directions for this term of council. So I'm pleased to take any questions tonight or over the next 2 weeks.
Thank you, Ms. Cordemonche. Questions tonight? Thank you. Is there a mover for the recommendation? Councillor Robinson, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. That brings us to our confidential discussion item. Councillor Knoll?
Yes, Your Worship, I have a motion that we move into closed session to consider personal matters about an identifiable individual pursuant to Section 239, Sub 2B of the Municipal Act.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. I have to ask the public if they would, I can assure you about the signs, those of you who are lingering for that I know of no opposition to the request for a report on how to regulate signs. And the sign bylaw was already adopted with no ban on election signs, so I hope that clarifies things for you. This is really this item, which takes us into camera, is really the last item of any import on the agenda. So at this time, I would suggest that you might want to consider the meeting as good as done, for your purposes anyway. We may have to linger a bit. So thank you very much for your attendance and your time and your attention. Council now resumes its public session, having met in a closed meeting not open to the public to consider a matter allowed for that purpose under the Municipal Act, namely personal matters about an identifiable individual. And Council, we now need a mover for the motion that the recommendations in the June 7 report from the CAO regarding a personnel matter be approved. Oh my goodness. Councillor Knoll. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. And that now brings us to the need to rise and report to Council, and we just need a mover for that. Councillor Elgar, all in favor? Thank you. That carries. I rise and report that Council has met and made decisions on discussion items number 1 and 2, or sorry, C1, and I need a mover and seconder for this report. Councillor Grant, thank you. Councillor Demoff, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. You have your information items and your status of outstanding issues report with your agenda. I understand that I'm not aware of any new business. I'm not aware of any regional reports or question period for town boards and advisory committees. However, oh, I beg your pardon. I'm going too fast. We do have notice of new business, and it's being distributed to you now. And this is notice of motion re-banning shark fin and cartilage products, possibly, moved by Councillor Demoff, seconded by Councillor Khan.
I believe it's in front of everybody right now.
Or is it in front of everyone? All right. The clerk popped up for other purposes. You have another announcement being circulated. So this is a notice of motion, no actions required. But now we come to requests for reports. Councillor Dudek.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to request a report, or that staff report back, rather, with options for council's consideration to regulate election signs on public property, and that staff solicit input from members of the public in the development of those options.
Thank you, Councillor Dudek. Is there a seconder? Councillor
Demoff.
Johnston, or Councillor Demoff, you wish
Yes,
to do that?
thank
Councillor
you.
Demoff, then you may have the honor. All in favor? Opposed, if any? The report is adopted unanimously. Now, we need a mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws. Councillor Robinson and Councillor Knoll. This is, they're all in the agenda. I'll name them by number because there's so many. 2011-32, 53, 67, 68, 69, 76, 77, 78, and 79. All in favor? Opposed? The bylaws are adopted. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
New business? Are we looking at new business right now?
No, we passed that.
Oh, okay.
We did the notice of motion.
Right, I thought Councillor Demoff was going to speak to it.
She does that next time, when you presumably pass it. Thank you for your time and attention. We are adjourned.